starting. So sorry for the delay. First, we could not gather people because of the lunch. Secondly, there was a power cut. But now finally, we're all here and our speakers are here and we are so happy to greet you at this brain date. I really love this creative name of the format. So we hope that the current date will enrich your brain after you listen to our speakers. But yeah, I'm Paulina.
Hi, I'm Ashcharya.
And we are coming from Center for Exponential Change, or C4C. C4C is a global network that emerged in India. And C4C supports the reimagination journeys of system orchestrators. And when we say system orchestrators, we mean organizations or leaders of the organizations who decided that they want to scale up their impact and they are moving away from the service delivery approach to mobilizing the ecosystem for the problem that they want to target at scale. And just to set the context, over the last 8 years, our team has co-traveled with over 500 social leaders across 30 countries, asking the question how to enable change at scale with speed and sustainably. And the curation of that knowledge came up as a set of 3 books. I'm holding one book here, but it is a set of 3 books which is called Think Scale, Think Speed, and Think Sustain. And basically the whole approach of exponential change is outlined in these 3 books. They're available online for free, just a disclaimer. So on the cards that you have, there's a QR code which you can scan and access the books at any convenient time after the session. So today, the session is about moving from being a doer to being an orchestrator, and many ideas that we are going to refer to will be from the following books. And why am I saying this? Because each of the speakers that we have with us today is already either orchestrating or aims to become an orchestrator, instead of doing just direct service delivery. So our first speaker is Shanti Raghavan. Shanti is the co-founder of Enable India, a non-profit organization that works towards economic independence and dignity of persons with disabilities. And Shanti says, I can only see the person, their potential, and the infinite possibilities. So from the very start of Shanti's journey, she always believed that the value of the individual is the most important thing. And throughout the last 25 years, she and her team have been trying to shift the narrative about persons with disabilities as nation builders, as change makers, and as active citizens. So she understood that a lot of systems are not in place for persons with disabilities. And Shanti was very convinced that this should not continue like this in our lifetime. And within the last few years, Shanti has been working with ecosystems and platforms to move into that orchestration roles. And Shanti actually started something called Purple Economy Movement across India. So over to you, Shanti, to give some more context about the work.
Okay. Well, I thought you were going to introduce all of us. Yeah, one by one. Hi, oops, that was a little. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I don't know how familiar you're with the context of disability in the country or the world, but just to set a little context, when, as humans, any challenge when we have, we are not necessarily happy about it, right? I have a cold and I'm already quite unhappy, like why the hell do I have a cold, you know? So the way humans view challenges is the challenge. And hence, when a person gets a disability or acquires a disability, and notice I'm not saying suffering from, acquires a disability, there is a journey the person goes through to overcome, you know, the barriers, right? But meanwhile, everybody around is only able to see that difference that this person cannot see or hear, and we call this a competency called include ability, being able to see the actual person and seeing the value. So the context we come from is whatever we did in livelihoods, we have been working for livelihoods for the last 25 years. The context is that, at every step when we are with the company, it starts with maybe, what's the value of hiring, which is okay, that's understandable. But can I say see to a blind? I said see you. Oh my God, that's why I don't want to hire. I'll make a lot of mistakes. It's okay, boss. You can say see you. So it starts from small things. When the interview is happening, the person may actually not even ask any questions, right? So at every step, there's a lot of work that we had to do to make the person being able to have that dignity. So the context, I'm just saying, is with livelihoods. The second context actually is that across India, there are largest number of NGOs are for persons with disability. The reason is, across every life stage, whether it's health, education, employment, elections, everything is a barrier for a person with disability, and everything which happens daily with you, transport, finance, is a barrier for disabled. I hope you're understanding why I'm saying this, because we're talking of a systems angle. Just see how many intersections are there. It is in this context that whatever we have now transitioned to, you will understand better. I hope I can stop here.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Shanti. Our second speaker is Aniket. Aniket is the founder of Hagdarshak, the first Indian social enterprise that helps individuals and micro businesses to avail the benefits of government welfare schemes. And Aniket started Hagdarshak around 8 years ago. And within this time, they reached out to more than 6 million people, activating the network of 40,000 plus agents called Hagdarshaks, and unlocking billions of USD of government benefits for the people. And in the last couple of years, Hagdarshak has been reimagining their impact at scale to see how they can move from only servicing people through Hagdarshaks to Hagdarshan as a vision of that provision of welfare benefits. So now Aniket is looking how this can be scaled nationally, and currently the team strategizes for 100 million people for whom welfare benefits are not actually a perk but a necessity, and they want to reach 100 million people before 2030. Yeah, Aniket, over to you.
Thank you, Polina. Sorry, apologies for being late. I was doing another session for the ShikshaLokam team, so not to be blamed on me. But at Hagdarshak, essentially in India, we are a welfare state. There is a lot of conversation that when AI takes over, everybody is going to get universal benefits. We are not going to be working, but if you put every amount together of state and center with the recent Delhi elections, Maharashtra elections, Karnataka elections, we're already moving there. Where we are giving cash transfers to people, we are trying to work out how to get social security, social protection, identities. So at Hagdarshak, we are trying to see how we can get people their eligible benefits through a technology platform and a combination of training on the ground. We spend about 10% of our GDP on social protection, so that's about 26 lakh crore. This last budget, out of which 20 lakh crore goes to different kind of programs of center. This is just the central government budget. For context, Uttar Pradesh's budget this year was 8 lakh crore. So how do you ensure that people get these benefits? Also to, again, put numbers into context, in India, we are, and I'm sure all of us through various forums have heard this, but the 3 India strategy, right? India 1, India 2, India 3. But there is that India 1, which is most of us in this room, which is about 30 crore people, 25 to 30 at a stretch. Then there is that India 3, which is about another 30 crore who are completely marginalized, who do not have access to digital literacy, phones, access. But there is that India 2 aspirational, which is actually the most vulnerable, because one bad health accident and they will fall back. They will fall back into poverty. So we are trying to see how can we look at enabling the eligibility, information and access. And in the last 2 years, we have been thinking how can we reimagine scale. One of the things has been from Hagdarshak to Hagdarshan, working a lot on a training academy of training other partners. And how can we reach this 100 million and even more, this scale in the next 5 to 6 years, not by doing ourselves, but how can we make enabling environments for people to get trained or get access to technology or services and deliver these the social security at the last mile.
Thanks, Aniket. And our next speaker is Sucheta. Sucheta is the CEO of Dream a Dream, a 25-year-old organization working towards empowering young people from vulnerable backgrounds to thrive. Under Sucheta's leadership, the organization has grown from working with 10,000 people in Bangalore to serving millions of young people across 6 states of India. And the shift in mindset from being a doer to being an orchestrator started when Sucheta and her team were learning from their failures because they understood that even though they have been empowering millions of young people to empowering and enabling them with life skills, the adversity was still coming back because the systems were not in place to keep that going for these children. So that's why Dream a Dream started focusing more on systems change and not just catering to young people, but also asking the question, how do we do it at scale and transform the education system, making it equitable? Over to you.
Thank you, Paulina. So I think you've covered most of Dream a Dream. Just to give context, when we say children coming from vulnerable backgrounds, what we mean by that is when you are a child growing up in a more healthy environment, whether it's a family or school, you have normal periods of development. You achieve developmental milestones. At 3 years, you start talking. At 5 years, you become a bit independent. By the time you're 15, you make friends with people from the opposite gender, right? So there are developmental milestones that children achieve in a normal course. But if you're a child growing up in adversity, if you've been exposed to violence, crime, malnutrition, not having love and care at home, right, not having access to a supportive environment, then you miss these developmental milestones. And that's why you find that children who are growing up in adversity, even though they might be going to school, they're not able to read, they're not able to write, they're not able to catch the bus and, get someplace. They don't know how to have healthy relationships. They don't know how to make life choices. So missing these developmental milestones basically impacts them throughout their life. So when we introduce life skills or social emotional based learning for children from adversity, that's what we mean. We are trying to help them overcome the impact of adversity so that they have the skills to deal with the challenges of life. Having said that, when we started working with the government public education system, when we first introduced social emotional learning, I don't know if you might have heard of the happiness curriculum in Delhi. When we did that first, we thought, this was a great scale model, life skills is happening at scale. But we realized that unless the context of the education system changes, life skills was still being delivered to make children good, right? Morally right. Only the top 10% were still getting the life skills inside the class, the first benchers. The real children who need life skills inside of those classrooms were still getting left behind. So that's when we started thinking from scale, but also systems change, mindset shift. How can the education system shift its mind to become more equitable so that all children can thrive? So that's the journey, really, that how do you, while at scale, think about mindset shift so that it's not the context, as it moves from a non-profit context to a government context, or when it changes shape and form, the value systems still also translate and move.
Thank you, leaders, for actually giving us glimpses of your missions. And we're eager to delve deeper into your journey, your personal journey as the leaders of these missions, and also hear from the audience their experiences. I'm particularly curious about this because I'm part of the Leaders Lab network at C4EC. And Leaders Lab network started with a very simple yet powerful question is, what if we created a leadership space that nurtures leaders to come together to solve at scale? And with that, our journey began with talking to more than 30 plus leaders across the globe, listening very deeply to their stories, anchoring their journey and the pivotal mindset shifts that they had, which actually shaped them. And when we realized, or when we spoke to them, we said, okay, or this was our observation, they began as social entrepreneurs who are doers, very close to the problem. They're trying to come up with programs and do direct impact. They then evolve into system leaders who are navigating the complexity, and they have great understanding of the social landscape and awareness of the problems that their missions are taking on. And we found a third kind, which is a +1 to these two leaders, which Paulina again pointed out are the system orchestrators, who are not just shaping the systems, but they are also orchestrating exponential change. And in our own observation, and this is purely from our observation and conversations with these leaders, that we realized there are 3 distinctive ways that they were standing apart. And the first one for us is that they're problem focused rather than being solution focused, where they're creating an environment where an ecosystem of solutions can come together rather than anchoring themselves on just one solution. The second was they were able to let go of custodianship. What I mean by that is scale does not lie in building alone, but actually enabling an environment where others can build up, above and beyond their own work. And finally, they were champions in actually convincing, and they had this great conviction to bring people together and diverse actors within the system to ensure that they are able to influence the ecosystem and come together for a shared narrative. So today we'll be anchoring our conversation around these 3 mindsets and traveling with some of the quotes that will be appearing on the screen, which is from the Think books. So can we begin maybe with the first question, and then we'll move on to the audience as well to get your opinion and your thoughts on this. Thank you, Shikhar. So shifting from doing to orchestrating requires an enormous amount of leap of faith. And the first or the core of it is actually to let go of custodianship. And this does not mean delegating tasks, but to actually trusting people to take things forward in ways that you haven't imagined that they will take it forward. So my first question, and a very internal question to you 3, is that what were your biggest mindset shifts that actually truly allowed you to let go? And how did you manage or balance the tension between providing structure and allowing the flexibility for things to evolve beyond your own hands? And anybody can start off.
Yeah, so you're asking about mindset shift. According to me, I had a different behavior from the beginning. One is, I was working alone. You're the entrepreneur. So, I started with computer training for the blind, and, there are more than 21 different disability types. So I'm seeing the problem, and I was focused a lot on the problem patterns, so that was good. The funny thing is, if I saw a problem today, I'll give you a funny example. This girl I was teaching, I taught her font, I felt really good about it. And then she started putting every word in a different font. And I realized that she didn't know how sighted people do fonts. So that's when I came up with the word sighted perspective. So one of the things why I did that was actually I felt the next day, I don't know. So I already thought of myself as a different person the next day. Why am I going to remember this? You did something very quickly, and I find a lot of NGO workers are so good at what they do, but they don't realize the value of what they've done. So in one way, I was already building for other people. So that's how it started, And then it evolved into a frame that I had from the beginning, which is a little different because very often we say, how can I do this? But somehow, I remember in 2006, I said, how can every person in the country be my placement agent? So just that thought, I have no idea. But what you start doing then is building products, which is a natural progression. But the products were not to sell a solution. It was because you had enough insights. So one of the things we did, try and understand, because of the context of these many disabilities, you saw in fact, if I take a page from Sucheta's book, somebody may have come to us after sitting for 30 years in their house, not knowing what to do. How do you start? Where do you get started? So the only thing that works is when you go to a human level, because each problem looks so different and daunting, you will stop right there. So the insight, for example, we had was a person with disability. Nobody's expecting anything from that person. So what did we do? We expected everything from that person. So you come to the training, you are doing the responsibility, you are the manager, you are going and doing volunteer work, you get the idea. So our product was more from the patterns of the problem and the insight, right? So I think it was just, if we have that frame, and if we have these kind of sentences, at least you are on the right track, because you'll never start out, oh, I shall become a system orchestrator day one. It doesn't work that way. But I think when really, not a shift, but a gradual understanding that, oh, we are all actors. We are not aligned. We have different ways we see the problem. That language and understanding of system, that was what helped me a lot. I will always come back to language, but that's kind of how I see that shift, you know.
Thank you. So language and the system is what was critical.
And just understanding how systems work and how I looked at inside the organization, right? Whatever I did, it didn't look like even others were looking at it the same way. So you had system actors within your organization and then outside, and then you realize it's about aligning. You realize we all will have to align to each other's lovely ideas. Just because you thought a certain way doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's more about, can we all start seeing the same, it's not about same picture, but can we see it together? Let me put it that way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So Jeta, what was that point when you truly had to let go, and can you give us some anecdotes of those?
Yeah, there's so many. So I'm like, so many are coming up even listening to Shanti. What has been true of Dream and Dream from the very beginning is we were always very clear that for us, it's the idea of life skills and social emotional learning. It's not necessarily that Dream a Dream has to do it. So from the beginning, we have been, how do you scale the idea? How does it get into the ecosystem? So in that sense, and the idea is by itself, right? In its own self, it belongs in the world. So that's how we have always operated. Having said that, there were things to let go. I think the most recent one we had to let go is, like I said, when we went into these classrooms and we realized that while life skills was happening, social emotional learning was supposed to be happening, it was still very unequitable. And how do you change mindsets inside the education system? And what it dawned on us is that life skills and social emotional learning, we always knew this, is a process. There is no outcome to get to. There's no best confidence level you will reach. You will never have perfect agency, right? You're always in the process of developing yourself, developing social emotional learning. And when we had to apply that same idea and concept to systems change, we realized we have to reorganize ourselves from wanting to get somewhere. So as an organization, we stopped then measuring ourselves from a future point of view and saying, 5 years from now, 30 million children, we kind of had to let all of that go, different context, and saying, how do we invest in the process? And that walking together itself is the outcome. Because if all of us walk together and we make sure that every child is walking together with us, that itself is the success. So I think redefining success for ourselves and letting go of some of these traditional notions of success has been the most recent letting go that has happened.
Oh, wow. Thank you. And on the contradictory here, we have a number put out for 2030. When you think of that number, and when we talk about letting go of custodianship, how does those two sit with you, Aniket?
So our journey has been 3 parts. And in terms of the number of years that we've been there. But the first 5 years, like any organization, we'll do everything, right? Like we are the best at what we do, and that's striving to be everywhere, do everything. Then COVID happened to everyone, and then we suddenly got, in fact, a lot of work. And for the short period, we started thinking that we can solve the problem. But I think in the last 2-3 years, we've gone back, and with multiple struggles that happen with any growing organization, we were also facing the same. And the decision to take was, what are we really passionate about? And what we realized as a group of people working were that we are obsessed with the problem. Right? We are obsessed with the problem of solving for social security, but we need to let go of the solution. So we let go of the solution in our mind itself, that our solution is just one of the things that can work. It's not the only thing. That was for us the starting point. Then we went back to our mission statement, which says social security for every citizen. But we put a comma there and said, in our lifetime. And that kind of triggered a change in the organization to say, let's put a timeline to say by when we think we can work towards multiple solutions, and not just think of what we are doing, what is our solution, what we can solve for. So those couple of points were really I mean, it's still work in progress. So while I'm sitting here and saying all of this, it's still work in progress. But we are, I feel, getting there.
Thank you, Aniket. I think it's for everybody. It's still work in progress. That's what I'm going to take back, and that means there's also a lot of organizational shifts that's going to happen, and that brings us to the next question that Polina would like to ask.
Yeah, can we change the slide, please? Yes. So let's look at this statement, which says, let us scale the impact, scale the ideas, but not expect any one organization to scale to the size of the problem. So when this happens, what has been how has your understanding of yourself as a mission leader changed? Because in this process, you have to trust the ecosystem and you have to designate some roles and responsibilities in the network that you are trying to build. So how did your view of yourself change in this process?
I think we were fortunate that there was a lot of complexity with respect to, at every stage, every person being the barrier, right, for persons with disability, like the person's parents. So before I come to organizations, we started working on distributing the ability to solve right from day one with persons with disability. So before we had thought, we'll counsel the parents so that they will allow the candidate to go to to work. Otherwise, they may come and say, no, they're making him actually do work. He has to actually work there. I mean, yeah, that's what employment means, So what we realized, we were a very small team. So from the beginning, what we did was we created what we called social integration project, where the candidate has to learn to solve their problem with their parent. Okay, and that worked amazingly. So it was not very difficult so that's not mission leadering, but you get the idea. I think the transition started when, honestly, just being inspired by the work that our awesome organizations do across the country. You just think about somebody working with an child with intellectual disability, and these folks come and tell me, we've worked with this child for 25 years. At the age of 15, the parent at least allowed the child to come, for example, and now the child is bathing himself. You understand? The amount of work to stop him to drool. And they're saying, what next? Oh my God, you get goosebumps. So you just know that there's so much power. It's just that they may not know what we do, how we do employment, how to talk business case and all that thing, or work in the rural area, ecosystem building. But, so that inspiration automatically just makes you convene people together. And, then it's about that sharing and growing. And the beauty is that same leader who says, my child cannot do this. They'll say child, if it's an intellectual disabled sometimes, After sometimes, it doesn't say my child anymore. And suddenly, usually first the leader comes. And after that, you see that, then they bring their trainer. You see that transition. So I think it's true just inspiration. And if you can practice appreciative inquiry where you focus on the strengths, because always there'll be something like, we can be very purist. They don't do this way, So when you can kind of not be bothered about that, and I can only see that amazing what they're doing really well and looking at amplifying it. And I think it's actually a very easy transition to be a mission leader just with that. And now what happened was I was a mission leader for this intellectual disability wala thing. And then after that, I have a deaf mission leader for the deaf collective, because we like persons with disability leading the collectives. So before the initial, what we call manthan, where you meet, share, grow, he's like, it will not work. He's an Indian, but he was in America. No, it won't work. It's a Liam. You understood that immediately. So he's like, it won't work. Are deaf. They won't understand. They will be very angry. They won't share with each other, whatever. But actually, it's also about using the right science, which is the behavior science. Everybody knows that, right? You do the World Cafe model and many other things. We did it online. But just after that first manthan, he changed. Anything we did, we are planning a leadership program. The entire community is told, this is what we are thinking we should do. This is the research. This is the data. What do you think? And we moved as per the community. And now we have a cerebral palsy leader who's leading the cerebral palsy collective. And she's, building leadership so that the collective can work. So it's actually inspiring just to see people and what amazing things people do. That's all.
I think what Shanti is telling is an example of emergence, because at C4C we refer to the examples from nature a lot. And we typically say that in nature, change does not happen as a result of a top-down approach from some boss or some bureaucrat. So when you are not sure about how things will unfold, but you know what you are trying to achieve, and you know that you can trust the people that you are working with, the situation will unfold, and it will emerge on its own in the direction that you are trying to shift it. Yeah, Sucheta, please share
Yeah,
your...
no, I agree with you, Paulina. And another synergy I find with Shanti is the strength-based lens. We call it the strength-based lens, right? And we're always saying that about children as well. Sometimes we classify good behavior, bad behavior, all of that. And we're always asking, what's the strength behind the behavior of the child? So when that child is acting up, throwing a tantrum, do you see leadership, right? When this child is throwing things and walking out, do you see agency? When you see a child keeping quiet, sitting in the corner, not participating, do you see choice making? Right? How do you see strengths, especially in what is considered bad behaviors? So I resonate with this strength-based approach and lens. And to answer your question about how that translates into trust in the ecosystem, so for us, like I said, the whole systems change was about understanding mindset, that it's about changing mindsets, about education, about success. And when we started understanding that it's about changing mindsets, and we are scaling now. We ourselves as Dream a Dream when we started, actually, this is what I want to say. So when we started at Dream a Dream, life skills were still considered very elitist, right? Oh, children don't know to read and write. How will you do life skills? So it's been a 25-year journey of making life skills, social emotional learning mainstream. Today, we are working in 7 states. There are at least 15 states across the country that have introduced social emotional learning as part of the school calendar. Part of the academic calendar, 40 minutes is given to social emotional learning. So that's how the ecosystem itself has scaled. And I think how we are trusting in this is to know that systems change happens in fractals. If you're seeing a change happen at one place, that means it's happening in the whole system. So when we have this biggest donor in the education space in India, he says that they are now saying from fixed outcomes, right, measuring performance-based outcomes to measuring process. That's a systems change for us, and that's a fractal of change which tells us that the whole system has changed. There is this teacher in Telangana who found one of her students in jail. He was a juvenile in jail. She brought that child out of jail and integrated him back into the classroom and made sure that all the other students know how to deal with a child who's just come out of jail, right? She sensitized the class so that he can get integrated back. When that change has happened, you know the system has changed. So to trust the ecosystem, you should know that every change is a systems change, and change is happening in fractals. And if you're seeing these mindset shift happen in any small place, it means it's happening in the system. And then, of course, the whole system also has to change. But the way to trust the system is to trust in fractals.
Thank you. Aniket?
I think overall, like very similar in terms of, for us at Hakdarshak, the change thinking and kind of really started with our Hakdarshikas on the ground, women agents that we trained. So what happened was we did a project in Chhattisgarh where we trained 3,000 women entrepreneurs. And after 2 years when we went back, we were there with them, but we went back to see what's happening. 45 women went ahead and won Gram Panchayat elections. And we figured, what did we do here? Right? Like how we are apolitical, tech focused. How did this happen? And I think that realization then started happening that these kind of changes are not in your control, because I think when you are triggering something in the ecosystem, then I think certain factors start playing. And I think they start, and there is no point designing for it. A lot of us spend time in, we'll design the program in a way and then we'll reach a place. So that's again something that we started looking at in a lot of our work since then, that we'll focus on one thing and do one thing really well. And then certain communities and certain possibilities, certain ecosystems will take it in a very different way. Right, the same program, if you were to do in an urban slum community, would have a very different kind of an impact. And I think that's something that has kind of also led us to see how do we look at our entire training model and a scale model as well, in terms of how do we see these change agents kind of deliver the services on the ground. What are the kind of organizations we would want to work with? I think earlier we were very kind of selective. We had an eligibility criteria that we will work with organizations who are tech focused, livelihood focused. And I think that also kind of internally has changed now to see that anyone and everyone, whether it's a parent, a community leader, any kind of citizen, can use that platform to trigger, in our case, social security access, but with that kind of have that kind of impact and change on the ground. So I think those are some of the things that have kind of been, again, in works and we are seeing on the ground.
Thank you, Aniket. I think that also comes to the third pillar that we were thinking of, is actually enabling the entire ecosystem to come together towards the shared narrative. As you three were talking, I did notice the audience writing down quick notes. So I would actually want to open it out to the audience, and especially if there are mission leaders here. Have you been struggling with a challenge as such when you're looking at scaling your mission? If yes, you could share your challenges, or if you have any questions for our guests here, you could ask those questions as well. We'll leave it open for another 5 minutes before we move into the next segment.
So one of the things which we are doing is enabling college girls, and these are coming from marginalized communities, to create and come up on social skills, life skills. Now, spread across 9 different locations across 2 states, we are now struggling, how do we scale? Because so far, and I have a background which is a mix of technology plus learning and development, but trying to put up with soft skills and soft skills scaling up, we have still not been able to unlock, despite talking to a lot of people, how do we scale it without having individuals on ground, and the ratios are just somehow killing us.
Can I repeat the 3 pillars? Yeah, let go of custodianship, problem focused, and what was the last pillar? Enabling the ecosystem. Yeah.
You know, if I had to go back and start all over again, what I realize is while you've been doing all this, like, I'm thinking that we were doing something similar. I mean, something to develop, whatever. So actually every step, what gave you joy, right? You saw that transformation. You saw, at that time we shared the stories more internally. Actually, if I could go back, I would just, because it's coming back to that manthan. I would go and make sure that we are sharing with others and they're sharing with us, and we're like, because actually now I realize that what we were doing in the beginning was adaptive leadership. And adaptive leadership means you learn together how to solve. So if you think about it, it's possible that's what you've been doing. You'll have to figure it out, because obviously you didn't have all the answers in the beginning. If you had a small team, you're like, that's why, you're having aha moments. But the thing is, we've never done this with the entire ecosystem. So, and the landscape of each person is different. So somebody who has been brought up with a weakness-based lens, like, बच्चे में कमियां देखना कि maths में अच्छा नहीं है, ऐसा है, वैसा है. Suddenly, that person has also become a teacher or whatever. You're not going to expect them to suddenly do what Sucheta is expecting, right? But what you're doing is sharing the stories. You want to know, when we did the strengths thing, can you believe it? Actually, वो बच्चा class में बहुत दूर बैठा था. But we said, I like the way you exercised your choice, and whatever. That's all. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking how each person after that is like, aisa hai kya? And I'm not expecting that suddenly the teacher now becomes, oh, I get it. I should not say anything to my child when they're bad at maths. But I don't know whether I'm really answering your question, but I know I'm getting clarity. So thank you for the question. Mere ko clarity mil gaya.
And I think just I think it can be firstly like very challenging, like to be in a position where, like you mentioned, you are in 9 districts, 2 states. At Hakdarshak, we've incrementally, in 2 years, we exponentially scaled, and then we have, if you would put our growth in a chart, we have plateaued. But we are still scaling, because when I started Hakdarshak, there was not a single organization working end-to-end on social security. I can count now, there are 14. I think that's scale. What you're also scaling outside of pure numbers, definition of scale can be very, very kind of, clear. What are the other pillars? What are the other things? What is the ecosystem? How is the ecosystem scaling, right? Because once the ecosystem scales, there will come a trigger point. You just have to be patient. Purely organization-wise, I'm saying that trigger point, when it comes, you have to be patient and ready, and you'll exponentially scale, because you're part of building blocks of doing that thing. But it's a good thing sometimes you pause, maintain, improve the quality. I'm sure in livelihoods, like in all other sectors, quality is again a thing, right? So improve the quality, improve the process. So actually anchoring around the main 3 pillars of all the things. But it can be challenging, because when you go on LinkedIn and see this is happening, that's happening, it feels like we're not scaling. So that happens.
Any other questions from the audience?
Somewhat similar, but you spoke about getting the players in the ecosystem aligned, and okay, so we're working with this vision that early childhood education should be prioritized in the system, and we're trying different approaches. We are appreciating that there are numerous intersections of it, and scale itself cannot be a unidimensional approach. But we find that the ecosystem players are just not, for the lack of a better word, ready. Even sometimes at the vision level also. Okay, so yeah.
Yeah. You have a question? It is true. And it can be frustrating, and it can be frustrating. It's understandable. But it's the long haul in some ways. I would invite you, like I said, to celebrate the fractal changes. I think there are changes happening in fractals in early education. And if we can see those, then we'll know that every change is changing the system. So it's not always the lens of scale, but system change also happens in fractals. But I understand it's frustrating.
So the question is then are there any tricks of catalyzing?
Okay, are there any tricks? Yeah. Okay, I'll just give you an anecdote that when we first tried our first Disability NGO Alliance, getting people on the table took us God knows, and I didn't do it. Deepesh, my husband, he did the grind work of 4-5 years, and then finally, when things started coming, that's when we did a leadership visioning. I had the good fortune of actually associating with somebody who really does behavioral science really well. And when you use the right science in that 3 days, rather than the vision being I want better funding or something, really the meat of the vision emerged. But after that we had to really do more work, etc. So this took 7-8 years. Cut to it, because I learned then behavioral science, open space technology, OST and all those. I happened to go to Jharkhand, and very scattered NGOs, many across from east, etc. We were just doing a little, exposure, like presentations and other things was being planned, but I had planned it differently. They thought I'm going to speak for the entire day or do some workshop on employment. I spoke for 20 minutes, and then we did OST. So OST is all about, people, what it is, right? So topics, people voted, all that kind of thing happened. And then by the end of the day, and this was not the idea, they said, can we all collaborate and can we form an association and form an alliance? What actually happens is each organization, especially if they're grassroots, starts feeling I'm lower than others. This person knows more. I don't know. Nobody's going to look at me. My ego, your ego. It's not about ego. It's like you've done work. You've really done work, So when everybody got a chance to put their item and it got voted for or against, so it's like, and I used to make it really funny. Janta ki rai, aapko 2 vote mila. So all those funny things, all that happened. But at the end of the day, everybody could look at themselves and feel equal and proud and at the same time felt a sharing. I don't know what happened. So all I can say is maybe the answer also lies in using the right science. I might be wrong, but that's what worked with us.
Okay, I can go ahead. Okay. So it's more like a question, thinking aloud, that there are multiple good practices, or you know what is best for the learning experience of a child. And scaling all of those is a big challenge. And when you talk about a good school model where you have multiple pillars, maybe 7 or 8 different things that need to happen for child well-being, safety, parent engagement, quality learning, and so on and so forth. And if that is something that needs to be scaled, one is the bandwidth, the second one is the time that it takes to show an impact, third one is the quantitative impact that everybody wants to see, which is not possible to document in 2 years or 3 years. How do we juggle between all of these challenges, and how do we choose the path that would mean, in the right sense, would be scaling the impact and not just scaling a program?
Yeah, I don't think we are sitting here not necessarily having an answer, so to speak, because I got some other point, but I don't think it may answer your question. So when you've been trying to scale, you're trying to scale all these best practices across locations. Is that what you're trying to do?
We started with 2 or 3,
Huh.
but very quickly it just evolved into 10 different things, because that is what is contributing to a good learning environment.
There was a very wise, I understand this. There's a very, something that has also happened in the same learning, this Manthan kind of environment. Sometimes in this OST or whatever, the things that people choose are like unexpected. Like I'm thinking you're going to talk about how can we do this with candidates. They're talking about how can I actually write a report for a funder. What I'm trying to tell you is that actually the needs may be very different from what we want to give the person. So a very wise person who was working with us started doing something really strange. We have the manual, we have everything. She'll just say, these are the things, what would you like? So what are we talking about? That's the best way of saying co-creation. Because if I don't address your need, right now you want to eat a gulab jamun. Now maybe it's wrong or right for you, but if I don't feed you that, after that only you're going to listen to what I have to say. So I don't know if that gives you any insights, but I know that the things that have worked for us is frameworkizing things, because we have a problem of plenty. If you have 10, I'll give you 20,000. Because I told you all these risks, problems with disability and employment and all that. So we went to the framework approach that helped to co-create with organizations or places, then co-creating with the actual person. So it's like 3 levels of co-creation. And I can tell you, the best part is it'll build agency at the NGO, at the candidate, at the whatever, and they take what they can bite. That's the problem we have. I thought too enthusiastic, want everything. I want to feed the person with buffet meal, but maybe they need just that gulab jamun right now. So.
I think, sorry to worry, but I think that is something we slowly try to adapt to around 9 diverse locations. Start with 2 locations, address that kind of a perspective. The 3rd location throws up different challenges.
Yeah, I mean, just to offer a counter view, I fully agree with Shanti. She uses framework, we use insights, right? What is the insight you want to scale? The
insight is inside the framework.
Framework, correct, yeah. But a counter I would offer is that scale is not always wide. Scale can be deep.
Yeah.
So if you're doing deep scale, just look at it as deep scale. And there are many ways to look at scale, and deep is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and then change makers will emerge, right? And then they will do the scaling, yeah.
Keeping time in mind, we'll move to the next segment and come back to the Q&As after this. Q&A after this, is that okay? We'll come to you first. Okay. We will still continue with scale in the next segment as well, but if you want, you can quickly, yeah.
Sorry to take too much time, but just to give an example on scale with maybe inspire some of your, goals in that way. So I used to work with WWF India, and I was given a major challenge on scaling one program that I didn't really know, which was about connecting people with nature. And I just came with a naturalist background and all of that. And I was told that, in 1 year's time, I need you to replicate this program to 14 different states in India and lead them. And I was like, how am I going to get everyone to do and, ensure that quality will match, or how would it work, And then, I happened to get people from all different backgrounds. One who wanted to, get into urban development and all, but they just ended up wanting to connect people with nature. And it was all about their passion driven, and they managed to, scale that. And today I have a person who I've managed to mentor, running through the things, probably giving better quality sessions than what I used to. So absolutely spot on when it comes to, letting go of the thing. So that's one aspect. But the second aspect is when you get to scaling, a lot of times something that gets missed on is the engagement quality. So example, if today I have to scale from 1 to 50,000 or 1 lakh people, because I've learned in 1 year that, okay, I can train multiple people and get them to make that impact, that should not be a problem. But a lot of times when you scale for that impact, the engagement that you used to create with maybe 10 people, now that engagement level is drastically dropping. So I wanted to understand, how is it possible to maintain that engagement level that you used to have with a 10 or a small group? The same level, how can you, maintain with a larger group for that same impact?
I mean, we can't. First, I think the answer is you cannot, and you shouldn't expect. At least that is how I see it. When we started and had 100 trained agents on the ground, today we have 45,000 trained agents. We just have to decentralize, set up a process, and hope that, like you said, the people we have mentored or trained are also going to do it in a similar way, and hopefully not in the same way.
How are they helped to become part of the network and how they propagate? So there's a lot of network effects that can actually happen. And in fact, it will be much more richer because you taught at a senior level to somebody, but that person is just grappling with nature, what I mean, right? So they will explain it in a better way to their peer. And you can also gamify it and that kind of thing. So just FYI, we actually run a social networking platform in the rural area, which is not like time pass wala, it's a moderated one. But peers are actually enabling each other and solving each other's problem. Because there's no way I can know the answers to everything. One person helpline sitting. People think it's a helpline. It cannot be a helpline, right? The example is different, but you get the idea. So what we're finding is a girl from somewhere in North, I'm sitting at home, how do I even do work from home? Somebody says, tum phenyl banao. Next person says, tum phenyl kaise banao? So suddenly, in the span of 2 days, all the answers were given. Right? So the questions that people will ask about nature, they will not tell it to you. They'll ask the peer. ये बोल रहे हैं कि insect को touch करो लेकिन मुझे whatever, so there will be some things much more rich that will happen, and the network effects are the most powerful because each one becomes a leader, each one becomes an owner, things happen. So we have star users now, and they come on the platform and they're like, I'm a star user, because I've enabled so many people. So it's crazy what can happen. They don't really do this. That's me, okay.
Actually, what Shanti said magically brought up the effect on the nodes. As one node or one network kind of connects in, their own networks split, and I think that's the magic when you think of impact at scale and how does network effects play. This brings us to the next segment of the problem focus than solution focus. So many organizations have strong solutions and their effectiveness serving the share of the populations that they have determined or they have discussed and put together, and we're not debating the effectiveness of it. But yet their scope, or when you look at the long-term goals, it's only catering to a small size of the problem that's at large. And we believe that this is because of a solution focused as well, because what you're able to achieve in one district when you move in or 6,000 to different states, it's difficult. So when you transition from a solution focused mindset to a problem focused mindset, there are organizationally there are some challenges, some issues that point out. And Polina, would you want to ask that particular question around the organization?
Yeah.
So we wanted to ask, how does that look for you organizationally, that transition? Personally, but also how does the whole team have to change in terms of priorities and vision? And where do you see yourself right now in that transition?
I think now I look at it from a perspective that as an organization level, we are still, I would say, grappling with that thought. I think we're early in that phase because most people, and organizations are very possessive about their ideas and the way they work. So I think just to open up that thinking also is taking time. And I think it's at an organization level, and I think we were discussing about this earlier at lunch as well from the book's perspective. And I think everybody is tuned in the ecosystem to look at every change as a manual, training manual. Somebody will tell you, then you will make the change. It's very difficult to think about change, to adopt change, to think like that. And I think at an organizational level, including myself as a leader, I think I can say me and a few leaders are slightly ahead of the curve because we've also got more exposure and conversation and mind space. But the team is still getting there. And I think that's going to be tricky. And I also realize some people will fall off that thread, which is fine. Because I think we don't need to get 100% people along. And that's bound to happen because they will chart their own path and own way, and they'll probably do better things and solutions.
I think we have managed to stay problem focused basically because we look at young people and we see that their problems continue. I'm reminded of this girl, Anjali. She came to us when she was an adolescent. We put her through many skill development, life skills programs. She had dropped out of college, so she said she wants to join college. We negotiated with the family, got her back to college. Then she happened to attend a baking class that was just happening, and then she decided she wants to drop out of college and do baking. So we go back, help her negotiate with the family to drop out of college, become a baker. She became a sous chef at Ritz-Carlton, a pastry chef at Ritz-Carlton, and we saw this is it, right? This is what we worked for. And then COVID happened and she was laid off in a week. No severance, nothing. She's just laid off. COVID, she lost her dad, so then she got married because they needed a man in the house. Today she bakes cakes for her community. That's the choice. She doesn't want to work, she wants to be a homemaker and bakes cakes for her community. Now this is what we realized, that you can build life skills in children, but the problems that they face don't actually go away. Especially if you're growing up in adversity, there's always challenges, and these systemic barriers keep pushing young people back. So I think every time we fail like this is when we go back to the problem. And that's how we remain problem focused. That's why originally we started working on life skills, because we saw young people didn't have the agency to make choice, to negotiate, to decide what they wanted to do. We helped them build that, then we saw them grow up and we realized that, oh, systemic barriers are still pushing them back. They having life skills is not enough. The systems around them have to be equitable, have to be inclusive. And that's how now we are focusing on how can we make the education system more equitable and inclusive. But I think where we are on that journey is we keep looking at our young people, and as long as they still have problems, we are problem focused.
You know, in our case, I only see broken pipes. If any person with disability came to us, let's imagine a person who's deaf and blind, who cannot see, hear, or speak. You understand, what does that mean, right? How did this person come to us? It's a very long journey. What did the mother do? How many years she went around India? Then how that he landed up in Helen Keller Institute in Mumbai. So by the way, I'm already seeing the dots, right? How many people were involved for this gentleman to come finally? I mean, he was a good friend of mine also. He only does tactile sign language, whatever. But that journey has taken 30, 40 years, and it's all broken pipes. I don't expect one more person like him to come. Who's going to be on the streets of Delhi looking for where do I help, how do I help my child from a small village in Kolkata? So there is no abundance. For a person with disability, there are no services available easily. And this is not about some marginalized population and all that. We all would have been marginalized in 1600s when healthcare didn't exist. You would have gone 1,000 kilometers away for maybe a medicine, small medicine. Today, we are sitting with all these non-broken pipes and systems, which is enabling us to look able, because as a patient, we have been taken care of. So that's where I'm sitting. The problem is more than 1 billion people, and more than that, their families, and I think a lost opportunity for all of us to learn amazing insights, amazing innovations. We as humans can learn when we have difficulties how to approach a challenge. So that's where I am. Great. Now, the team. The good thing is we have been always talking about when we don't exist, we have done our work. So that's great. But I'm still finding it a challenge, and I don't know, why that is happening. Because our people have that focus of we don't need to exist, It's something about tangibility. You've been used to, okay, take this immediately. Okay, so what goal? That's the problem. So then we carved out some people who have now been called architects. We have told you will work on system emergence. You will work on things, you'll do experiment, something will emerge, from that you'll learn, get insight, blah, blah, but you'll also hold collective spaces. I'm still trying to figure it out. There is something missing, and I think maybe it's a let go issue. I don't know. It's a tangibility more than even letting go, because our folks have learned to let go because we did all these things by which social integration project, blah, blah. So there's something about tangibility that I'm working, 2 months have passed, I don't see anything. That's the problem. I don't know how to break that. Whereas I tell them how to make things tangible also. Fir bhi wo tension hai. So I don't know the answer. We'll figure it out.
Could it be that we redefine success?
Absolutely, and I actually, that's why I noted down this measuring the process. I was going to ask you offline, how do we look at measuring process? Because I've always felt the answer is in the process. So I think it is about how we redefine success, but it is, and also maybe telling it this way, right? Maybe I was thinking that in my mind, but did I tell that to redefine success? Maybe not. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you.
Thank you. And I think this is also coming back to our final segment, which is what we've often spoken about. We were talking about scaling and the power of the organizations that we are working with. So scale in the development sector isn't really about just one organization working on it and the efforts that one organization is putting together, but by actually unlocking the agency of all actors within the ecosystem. When people see themselves as actually problem solvers rather than passive beneficiaries, that's when change really accelerates. So my question to you three as individuals of these missions is, when did you realize your role was not just about leading this organization, but actually unlocking the potential of the system and unlocking the potential of people within the system, where they said, hey, this is my mission and I will become the leader or the actor of this mission, and not become a passive beneficiary within this system that we are working on. So, Shanti, would you want to start?
Yeah, I think a good frame is, let's all be a little lazy. Like NGO workers, no? Have you seen, aisa jaan de dega, ghar pe nahi jayega, all that is there. I think a good lazy or whatever is a great place maybe to start. I don't know. All I know is when I see the size of the problem, and we have to have a sense of urgency about it. If every organization can do 25,000 more than what they're doing, and I don't want organization, why not every individual, right? Which you're seeing on the platform. So for me, it's a very easy shift that to be an orchestrator. I don't think I should be the only orchestrator, self-declared, I will be the orchestrator, no. But we have come up with this economic angle around disability called purple economy, right? Like healthcare economy was built around patients who were also sick and disabled when you didn't have systems. So with this, I'm bringing about some kind of narrative, and I'm hoping that this will be easier for people to grasp and take things forward. Just little reimagination. Oh my God, this could get unlocked. Are you telling me that as soon as I'm in the hospital, and instead of the doctor telling me there is no cure, I will get a counselor, I will get solutions, I'll get government schemes, and I am able the next day Is that what is possible? So I just need to make sure that gets ignited and I can get out of the way. I want to do something, like I want to be a little bit lazy, or do less work. It's not happening. I'm sure I'll be doing something else. But,
Be the first domino.
Sorry?
Be the
first domino, that's all, So, but I think I really want to see how, every time I'm listening to what we all know, it's just reiterating that this being problem focused and how better to be an orchestrator is coming in my head. But I mean, damn it, we've got to make this happen. Before our lifetime, 10 saal, may at least if things start vibrating. So we call it, I must tell you, I'm a little spiritual, but there's this para level, right? Which you say at the level of consciousness. When you start vibrating at the same frequency, we can say all this word alignment, but actually you'll start seeing people vibrating at that same energy level. That's when, things will start happening. So I'm just going to do that little bit and then move out of the way.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I'll be the problem.
Thank you. Sucheta, would you want to add on?
Slightly different answer. I loved your answer. Slightly different answer. I think, so we are a 100-member team. And about 35 are alumni of our programs because we've been around 25 years. So there's young people from our programs who work with us. And we have a large leadership team also. There's about, we call them the core team, about 20 of us, and there's only 2 alumni in that. And I asked myself, right, because I do believe in this idea that young people are not passive beneficiaries, they're active leaders, and yet inside of my organization, the percentages are not adding up. And then when I think about why that is, I know it's me. I come from privilege. I come from a lived experience very different from young people. The way I design the organization, the way I've built the system comes from who I am. So for me, the answer in moving from active leaders, from passive beneficiary to active leaders, is when people in positions of privilege are willing to invest in loss of that privilege and are willing to change their biases, their prejudices, think about how they might be recreating systems of discrimination and stereotypes because they have reached these positions because of their privilege, and recognizing that and taking responsibility for it and doing things differently. And that's what I think will create active leaders out of marginalized, out of marginalization.
I so loved what you said. I'll just add one thing. We've had, because we work on disability, somebody not disabled, but our drivers who have been just 7th grade, we've been able to get them to become managers, senior executives, etc. So level playing field, opportunities, all that given. The problem starts there because I was still from that background. So after that, what hits you is things that have never been taught in your home, like integrity, because our entire country or with politicians and so many things, you don't necessarily learn integrity when you were a truck driver. That's not gone away from you. And it hurts me because if it's an integrity issue, then you have to get rid of the person. So after you have done level playing field opportunities, continuously investing in the capacity because you don't know what the landscape picture behind is. वो बंजर लैंड से आया है तो वहाँ से ही वो ही होगा ना. So you cannot think because you feel so happy, man, it's so cool, he's senior executive. उसके बाद क्या हुआ?
I think, very similar kind of thoughts and ideas, but I think one thing, working with our team and a lot of, one thing that we've been working with our teams is to see how do we expose more problems in the ecosystem to them, and we are seeing some of them picking up those solutions and running with their ideas. And I think that's something that also we are consciously trying to do because we are very, very focused on the problem. The other thing is we've consciously said no to a lot of things that we could do. Any community-based organization in this country can pretty much solve everything, right? I mean, with maybe not that level of expertise, but can work on everything. The harder problem for organizations, the tougher problem, the tougher decision to make is to say no, right? When the funding opportunity comes, when do you say no? Because if you say yes, you can build a team or solve for all those things. And I think, how do you make an enabling environment where you stick to one thing But you have multiple other avenues for whether it's your team, whether it's your partners, whether it's for others to solve for those other parts which are in the community. So that's something that kind of me and the team are trying to do in the larger social security space, because what started off with the thought that social security access is one problem, we have realized it's a very micro problems comprising that big problem, and we can only solve a few, if at all. So who are the others who will be able to solve this? Whether it will come from the Hakdarshak community or ecosystem, or it will be the outside ecosystem, or it will be somebody who's completely going to not there today but will emerge, is something to probably think about.
Thank you so much. So when you are working with a lot of people to reach communities and population scale, basically, setting the audacious goals might be possible for the ecosystem, but still people might feel like this sounds very overwhelming. Because when we talk about scale with different audiences, we get to hear that how do we do this? We are not even able to do the state scale. How do we do the national scale, especially considering Indian diversity? So the question is, how do you balance setting those bold targets and making sure that people are not feeling overwhelmed by the bold targets, but instead inspired to actually make the change and contribute in the way they can?
I think in a country like India, the easiest thing is to set a goal, because you can say 100 million, 500 million, 300 million, and it's very believable. And you will easily reach 10% of that also, or a certain percentage of that. Where I think it's very difficult for us to make it believable is a steady path to that. And I think in that process and path, at least my experience of myself, my team, and some of the other organizations, you tend to get lost, because then you're chasing that audacious goal. So how can you make audacious processes, audacious plans, rather than audacious goals? Because we done that. Our statement very ambitiously said by this year, these many million. Now we are focusing more on the how. Like, what will we do? What will some other organization do? And I think that's making it more believable. That's making it more tangible. That's making it more the teams to kind of rally around and partners to rally around and say this is doable, because nobody wants to see a superhero at 2030, right? And 5 years later, nobody in the ecosystem wants to see a solution provider becoming the problem. So I think more and more kind of work towards that process and planning, and then we are seeing, at least in our work, that the teams are coming together.
Yeah, same. Audacious process versus audacious goals. I think that's it. We invest, because we are in social emotional learning life skills, there's a huge investment in the people, in the capacity of the team, because we understand that it's an inside out process, right? Social emotional learning. So we are always increasing the emotional intelligence of the Dream a Dream ecosystem itself, of the people, because that's how we see it will happen in the education system. But would echo Aniket's point that audacious process versus audacious goals.
In our case, it's slightly different. Basically, for example, what we've been able to do in the last 25 years has been to shift the narrative around persons with disability as, taxpayers, active citizens, people who have volunteered for their community. 56% are supporting their families. The primary bread earners, highest salary, fresher salary, 42 lakhs per annum, whatever. All those things are there. So, but we are seeing this because we did all this work. So our goals have, some of our kind of targets have been more campaign focused, like see a million, and then you have the tagline below it, right? See a million persons with vision impairment who become active citizens, change makers, and nation builders for the country. So that enables everybody to see the narrative inside the campaign, right? So that was useful. What happened funnily in one of our collectors, we have see a million here, a million, blah, blah. So see a million folks started saying, how do we count the million? Your number, my number. And it started becoming a big problem actually of how do we kind of integrate the numbers. So we we just started making it something where everybody feels good to be part of something larger. So that's kind of how one of this went. The other one has been very time-bound mission. We're kind of regrouping every 3 years. So you and I, we're not married. We get together for this. And, you can then tackle different problems. Right now, if you tackled something, same type of problem, but it's a little different. So in that, for example, it was called Mission 1000. And 1,000 opportunities for very severe multiple disability kind of folks. 1,000 opportunities that the company had to give. 1,000 days and 1,000 lives. So very easy to remember. It helped for the outcome, because otherwise when people are sitting, they don't know why they are sharing and what should they share for, or what should I get done. So it helped a little bit in that case, especially when it's this difficult a problem like severe autism, etc. The other one, of course, is now like this purple economy. I have no idea what, so maybe I will now take a page here and see, because process, I don't know, systems, it's so vast, I have no idea. But right now, just getting more and more people involved in it. And I think since now we've learned so much, let the community figure out what the target should be. A community says we want numbers, another person says I'll be process focused. We'll take it as it goes. But we'll be building the community first. It's going to be grounds up.
Thank you, Shanti.
We have about 5 to 10 minutes left. So if there are any quick 1 or 2 questions, we won't be able to take more, but if there are any questions from the audience.
I have probably a silly question. Okay, so you all highlighted saying we should be problem focused while wanting to scale up things. A lot of times as leaders, when you are problem focused, you either tend to create your own new problems or tend to create more problems for your team to manage. So how is it a possibility to ensure that you don't do something like that? Because it's really unavoidable in a lot of circumstances.
The first thought that's coming to me is the alternative is worst. To have the wrong solutions and then have your teams go after the wrong solutions. Right? So problem focus doesn't mean you don't think of solutions. It just means that you're always asking, is the problem getting solved? Not is my solution getting scaled? That's the difference, which is why it's important to always understand, it's important to discern that is my solution scaling but the problem not getting solved. Right? That's what it means. So not to say don't have solutions, obviously, but just make sure that the solutions that you are scaling are the right ones, and not just the one you have. That's kind of what it means.
Similar to that, and also that we have to acknowledge all of us, especially in the social space, are a cut above the rest in terms of corporate leaders for sure, because we are solving complex problems in itself. Within that, there is an added layer of government changes, then the ecosystem changes, then Trump comes in, then USAID goes out, then XYZ happens. So the problems increase. But the being problem obsessed or focused to what I was saying earlier, most importantly tells you when to say no. Right? Like if you keep saying no to the right things and focus on your problem, then your solution comes in. And then keep kind of also be agile to the problem statement, because problem statements evolve. The same problem can be, solved for a simple track like financial and digital literacy has been something that has been going on since 1990 when RBI started. But today we are talking about fraud, cyber fraud, OTP in the same domain when we are telling people how to read an SMS. And I'm sure in 5 years' time, RBI will come up with an AI module or even sooner. So the content has changed, but the focus is still digital financial literacy. Right? Organizations who've been at it for 30 years are still working on it. Now, the ones who are getting work are the ones who are being more agile, that the content is changing. If you're still going to go and train people on, the module that was being prepared 10 years back, then that's not going to work.
Just to add to them, I see it in 2 ways. When you've gone deep, when you're saying problem focus, not like, hey, kya problem. It's about getting to the insight of the problem. if it's a very human insight, it will work. It holds good. But the example he's been giving, no, these are the examples of patterns. It's about the type of issues going around the person. So something like I said, no expectation from the person with disability. Okay, that's great. But how is it manifesting for a person with cerebral palsy? You are not even allowed a decision of taking medicines when you have a mental health crisis. That's how it's, that's what the problem, we know that nobody's expecting, but there's these kind of issues happening. And that is the insight we know is includability of the parent, fair. But how do you ultimately, you need to keep knowing what the problem is. Because you had that solution ready-made for maybe something else. I'm just giving it as, I think just knowing the patterns of problems and, the response for that may have to be very closer to the ground. And how do you enable problem solving, for example? Or how do you build agency? That's the reason, I'm getting clarity on why do we do agency? Because I cannot be when you're having the issue. And especially we had to do that because person with disability every day is barrier. So you better know how to solve, boss. Apun nahi rehne wala hai. Something like that. So.
Thank you. Final question from the audience, if anyone has. Seems like no.
Okay, so thank you so much for being here, and thank you, dear speakers. I hope that this session was insightful for you. I think we talked about quite a lot of different aspects related to the process of getting to scale and how to think about it. We talked about change as fractals. We talked about the trust in the ecosystem, and I really hope that you keep thinking about the points that we discussed. A lot of these points are covered in the books, so please feel free to check them out online. They are available under Creative Commons on our website. You can scan the cards. I'm just repeating and access them. But before we close, just one question. If you could go back to the start of your leadership journey and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
I just noted them down. I was so excited with this question. For everybody, I'll just say, because we work on emergence, right? Things that are emerging. Since we are constantly working on emergence, I would say I would go back and I was developing language constantly, but being consistent about developing language around things that we don't know anything about. You get my point? I gave you an example, cited perspective. Like when you see the problem, you give it a name because then it's repeatable. If I tell you project management, you know what to do. And now you know I should do something about cited perspective. So that I would build language consistently. I didn't know, we were doing that, okay? Second is, I didn't also realize that I was making sense all the time, and we were doing it together, but we didn't know it was sense making. So if I could go back, when the team started growing, sense making, khalas, because you don't know you were doing it. So I would make sure that in our structure, we have sense makers, which we are doing now. But damn it, can I go back? Anyway, and then obviously, the thing that has really worked is when you have these platforms available, and more people should build such things, right? Where agency at scale has happened through this rural social networking platform. We have something called Project Discovery, which, enables people to know that they're innovators. So building those from scratch, and yeah, that's it.
The advice I would give to myself 10 years back is the advice I continue to give myself today. Just be gentle. This is hard, complex, emotional, draining work. So just be gentle with yourself and with the process. Yeah.
If I were to give an advice, the first advice I would give is, are you sure you want to do this? Very honestly, 10 years. But yeah, I think yes. What we have been learning for the last, or putting our team through the last 2 to 3 years, I feel like we could have had better ecosystem inroads if we had started this journey 5 to 6 years before. And I feel for the sector COVID was a kind of a big thing which shifted everyone's mindset, and I feel like we weren't ready. So maybe, yeah, 10 years back, kind of, if we were earlier from day one in our design thinking more ecosystem, more kind of not solving the problem ourselves.
Thank you. It was a really insightful session for me. Yeah, thank you, Shanti. Thank you all. I hope you had some insights that you can take back. And like Sucheta said, just be gentle with yourselves at every step of the journey. And yeah, have a great evening and join the rest of the sessions as well. Thank you.